MC for today. And so hopefully I'll be able to keep all of you from falling asleep. Okay. I'm excited to see so many people here today. I want to just, before I introduce our first two speakers, I'd like to just give you a quick background, just a quick thumbnail sketch of who we are and why we're here today. About a dozen years ago, the Free Market Medical Association was founded by Dr. Keith Smith and Jay Kempton in Oklahoma City. And the idea behind the Free Market Medical Association was to restore fairness and transparency in healthcare. A lot of people think that all this stuff that we're going to talk about today is new, and it's revolutionary. But people often forget that for thousands of years, direct care and direct contracting were the norm. And in many countries around the world today, it is still the norm and it works great. Somehow or another, we've allowed ourselves to be, some would say, Dr. Smith would say, brainwashed into believing that the way that most of us do things now is the only way to do it. But we're here to tell you a different story, and to show you the beginning of the revolution here in Nebraska. As far as the Nebraska chapter of the Free Market Medical Association goes, this iteration of it has only been around for a little over a year. Okay, I'll go a little bit more into my story a little later, but everything that you see here today, everything that we've put together has been due largely to the efforts of our new chapter and a small core group of people who said, you know what, we don't have to put up with the status quo anymore. We want to make things better. And so I'd like to acknowledge all the people who were in our core planning group, both in our chapter as well as those who are specifically involved in putting this event together. Would all of you please stand up? Those of you who were involved in setting up the chapter and also in setting up this event today. Thank you. Now, without any further ado, I'm going to introduce to you our first two speakers. Every one of you should see an agenda there in front of you. So, Jared Meays and where's Ty?
Right here.
Okay, there you are. And Ty Franklin. They are two benefits advisors. Okay, and between the two of them, probably a couple dozen years of experience in this business. And they're going to start by giving you an overview, kind of an intro to a lot of the questions and concerns relating to free market medicine, the problems we have, and where we're going to go. And the rest of the day is intended to kind of give you all the different puzzle pieces so that when we finally get to Matt, our keynote speaker, he's going to tie it all together for you. Okay? I think we've all left aside a few minutes at the end of each of our presentations for questions. So please make sure you bring your questions, particularly the hard ones. Those are the ones we really want. So, all right, without any further delay, let's welcome Jared and Ty.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. A. Everyone hear me? Good? Okay. I am going to take care of a couple of housekeeping things. Bathrooms, there's 2 bathrooms out here if you go out these doors. There's also more bathrooms out past this hallway and to the left if you need that. Keep eating, plenty of food still left out there. This cooler right here in front as we entered in, those are beverages to have. So just a couple of housekeeping things there for you. All right. I'm just grounding myself. This is a beautiful room. This is a lot of work, and we're so excited that you're here. This moment is both ordinary and extraordinary. It's ordinary in the sense that it's a Thursday in Omaha, we're at work, but it's also extraordinary that there's 100-ish people that signed up and that are present here to be a part of something that's bigger than ourselves. So thank you for being here. Jared and I have the fortunate and unfortunate event of kind of telling you how bad things are. But we're not here to tear down the current system. But we do want to be able to speak plainly and truthfully about what is happening. So we need to uphold the fact that there is harmful things happening as we all purchase and acquire healthcare. But we're here to speak truth, and our eyes are on something bigger, and our eyes are on what we're for. And we're for thriving. We're for you in this room. We're for Nebraska and Iowa and Kansas, and I know Wisconsin's here, and if I missed the state, I apologize. But we're for communities, and we're for people. And so, with that, we do need to start by talking about insurance. And insurance as a concept is not a bad thing. By principle, insurance is providing protection for an unexpected and a catastrophic event. So you think about car accident, we have auto insurance. Natural disaster, we have home insurance. A major health event, we have health insurance. The problem is that we've kind of turned or evolved that health insurance element into more than it actually is, in terms of it includes not just those catastrophic unexpected events, which insurance is designed to do, but it also includes all of our preventive care and our labs and our prescription drugs and our maintenance. And just to kind of compare and contrast that, do we include the price of our oil change in our auto premium? Do we include the price of the windshield wipers that need replaced or the light bulbs that need to go out? No. And we'd kind of like shake our head like, that's not, no. But you can make the connection that if we were to include all of those services and things that were bought to maintain a car, that insurance, that auto premium would go up, right? So, you add to this the fact that health insurance has evolved to incorporate more than just the catastrophic unexpected event. And then you add to it some misaligned incentives. You add to it the fact that there are, this has been going on for decades, so it's perpetuated and continued to grow. And then we ultimately land here.
Who doesn't love a good meme, right? I'm a sucker for a good meme. I'm sure everyone's seen this meme before. But this feels like kind of healthcare today, right? So who's going to fix it, right? So it might be a little bit tough to read, but those are a lot of the players that are in the healthcare ecosystem, and everyone's like, you're going to fix it. Oh, you're going to fix it, right? But the other thing is it's also blame, right? Because there is a lot of blame that gets passed around and shared. And fingers get pointed in all directions. So if you're looking for somebody else to have a solution, or you're placing the blame on somebody else all the time, what are we going to get? Probably not much, right? So I always like to use a good meme, but the good thing is what I'll say is that from the direct care or the free market concept, it's relatively new, I will say, but it is becoming more and more prevalent. As example, if you've heard of GLP-1s, has anybody not heard of GLP-1s or Ozempic or Wegovy or Mounjaro or Zepbound? Okay, good. I was really hoping that there would be no hands raised on that. So, in the direct care model, these two companies that make some of the most popular blockbuster, talking about potentially trillion-dollar medications, they're doing direct care, okay? So these are just two examples because a lot of health insurance plans are not covering them for secondary use outside of diabetes. But so what these drug companies are saying is, okay, they're not gonna cover them. Let's just go around the insurance and go straight to the consumer. So if any of you run a health plan or look at health claims data, these numbers are a little bit small, but Lilly has, their drug is about $350 to $400 a month, and Novo's is about $499. So that's direct to consumer, exact medication, coming directly to the consumer that they can buy. Guess how much this claim is? Somewhere around $1,300 to $1,400 a month. So that's about 50 to 60% less going around the traditional avenues. Okay, so this is happening, and this should be exciting because these are the big hitters, right, in the marketplace, and they're doing this today too. So something that you don't have to be afraid of, and you can really open up your mind to say, hey, maybe we could do something different in regards to this.
And so before we fully dive in, do want to just set the table a little bit about the stakeholders that are in the room and the stakeholders that make up a free market, right? So as we look at the chart, we have on the left sellers, so that's our facilities, physicians, providers, anybody that's offering a good and service, they're selling. And then on the buyer side, we kind of have twofold. We have employers that purchase on an aggregate, but then within those employer plans are patients. And all of us here are also patients. And then underneath that, Jared and I kind of sit in a facilitator role that kind of help, pair those two parties together. And so just when we think about free market medicine, this is kind of those three buckets that we like to think about. And so the questions we want to pose today, and that we're going to, as we continue to drill down into the, so where we're going is we're going to have a seller section, we're going to have a buyer section based on employers, and then we're going to have a buyer section based on the patient. And we're just going to walk around what the current is, and I'll get to it. But before we do, I just want everyone to pause and consider what happens if nothing changes. I won't ask for a show of hands, but I don't know how many people had a positive thought when that question came. So what happens if nothing changes? And the second question is, what happens if we know the price? So what is a different alternative?
So I'm going to start on the seller side. I am not a physician. I know there are plenty of physicians in here that are going to go into much better detail on their experience with the healthcare system and how they're trying to change. But I will try and share a little bit from our perspective, because we do play a teeny tiny role, like Ty said, in trying to connect all of these dots together within the ecosystem. So first of all, a lot of what I've heard is red tape. So we're going to share a short video that probably most of you have seen. It went super viral from a physician. Again, like Ty said, we're just truth telling today. We're just sharing. So it's not bringing a hammer to anyone. Okay. It's just being able to share kind of where things are at. So if we can play that for a minute.
2025 and insurance just keeps getting worse. I just did 2 bilateral LDs and 2 bilateral tissue trainers for patients, and I've never had this happen before, but during the second week, I got a phone call into the operating room saying that United Healthcare wanted me to call them about one of the patients who was having surgery today. It was actually a sleep having surgery. And, said I had to call right now. So I struck down on my case and I called United Healthcare. And the gentleman said he needed some information about her, wanted to know her diagnosis and whether her inpatient stay should be justified. And I was like, do you understand that she's asleep right now? And she has breast cancer? And the gentleman said, actually I don't, that's a different department that would know that information. And I was like, well, she does need to stay overnight tonight. And you have all the information with you because I got approval for this surgery. And I need to go back and move my patient now. But it's out of control. Insurance is out of control. I have no other words.
So, example, again, I'm sure there's many examples that physicians could share about the frustrations with that. And again, not to pass anything, but that was a super viral moment on the heels of some of the other temperature raising that's been going on in the health insurance space today. So that actually turned into defamations and lawsuits and a big thing online. If you haven't, I would take some time to go back, because it did really share a lot of the frustration that a lot of folks are feeling. And I think for better or worse, there's a There's a good thing to social media, if you can, very small maybe, but there's some of that, right? So the power of the network effect, that just really, really amplifies it. So just more of that type of red tape, right? That's only going to continue to get siloed within, if nothing changes. Also from the seller side is the amount of time and effort and energy that's spent on just dealing with insurance from the facility side. So I know this is small, a lot of you can't read, but I found this article, and it's from Duke Health, and I thought it was really, really interesting when they were talking about it, but I will shorten it up. They have, that number at the bottom you see there, 236, okay? That is 236 people that they employ. So think if you're a business owner in the room today, how many people are in your company, okay? Think about it. Duke University, that's one health system in North Carolina. They employ 236 people just to work on denials and appeals and reversals. That is when you hear waste in the healthcare system, that is a raw example of waste. And they overturned 97% of them. 97% of the time they got overturned. What are we doing, right? How do we make that a lot smoother and more seamless so that we're not having to spend all that extra time just trying to get paid? The other thing is, at the very bottom, this is the CEO talking. Duke Health spends substantial time and money to collect payment that should have been made and made promptly. That's it. I think that's a really powerful statement. And I employ that many people to see that's one system. You cascade that across the entire country. Okay? Last one is growth in administration. This is a chart I'm sure most of us have seen. That red line that's climbing up at the top, that's the growth in administrators from 1975 or 70-ish. All the way to 2020, okay? When you see those little boxes up there at the top, those are government legislation, right? So every time we get a little bit more government regulation, we need more people internally to try to figure out how to deal with the new government regulations that we have to deal with. The yellow bar is healthcare spending, and then that teeny tiny bar at the bottom is the growth in physicians. Okay, so actually providing the care is the smallest growth trajectory on that graph. I just always found that very, very interesting. So with that said, and some of the problems is, if nothing changes, how does this impact insurance? And what is the real cost effect for these issues from a seller's side? And number one is lost time. Okay, so that physician that we shared the video with, think how much time they're losing, having to deal with those calls and get on the phone and have to spend their time. So that's going to increase insurance costs because they're going to spend less time actually working with patients, and it's going to hurt more downstream from the impact of increased costs from insurance. If we employ this, if a facility has to employ that many people to just work on appeals and denials, what do you think they're going to do? We got to charge more, right? We have to charge more because we have more people to deal with on these ongoing issues and claims and appeals and denials that we have to deal with. So the cost of insurance covers what the price is. So if the price goes up, the cost of insurance is going to continue to go up. And then last, more resources, right? So labor is a challenge for a lot of folks, but they're going to have to continue to find more people, or they're going to have to invest in newer technologies to take over of what's a manual process today. That's all going to be priced in to the negotiations with their insurance carriers that they have when they go up for renewals. But if we know the price, how does this change the dynamics here? Physicians get more time, right? That's a really easy example. Get more time, and I've heard multiple examples. We were at dinner last night. There's great examples of just having more time with patients and to see more patients. There's going to be more efficient resources and revenue. So when I say more efficient revenue, right, on a direct care model, that interaction happens at the time of service, just like if you're paying for a cup of coffee, okay? That interaction, so more efficient, more stable, not having to chase and wait. And then enhanced trust, right? This would give the ability for the providers just to be more comfortable, right? Instead of having those uncomfortable conversations of, well, I don't know the price, it depends on your insurance, or to be the ones that are having to call to get payment from, and then that's a negative effect on that patient, because who's the ultimate credit risk default? the hospitals and the physicians and the providers and the facilities, right? So that could enhance quite a bit of trust within the community and patients as well.
All right, now we're going to switch over to the buyer side, specifically with employers. And so our first one is, if nothing changes, we are going to continue to purchase goods at unknown costs. There's no other good or service that we purchase where you go, you get the service, and then weeks or maybe months later you get a bill, and then you might get another one that's an explanation of benefits, and there's just confusion. So unknown costs, and you know, Jared and I sit behind renewal meetings all the time inside the data, and I think this slide right here, the market doesn't understand. And what I mean by that is we're looking at a facility fee for a hip replacement or a hip surgery. This is in the Omaha market, and this is with the same carrier. So if I'm a purchaser, these are all in network: provider A, provider B, and provider C. And so if we know what those costs are, provider A, facility fee for that hip surgery is $42,000. Do you think B is higher or lower? It's actually quite a bit lower. It's quite a bit lower. So if you were to go to provider B, same CPT code, same surgery, and we're going to assume it's equivalent care, there's a nice little discount there. Provider C is even lower, just under $10,000. This is how we purchase healthcare. It's all in network. It's all with, I'm giving them my insurance card, and these are all name recognized brands, hospital systems and independent surgery centers. So those unknown prices then lead to, and here's, to go back to that, the thing is me as a purchaser, if I say I went to provider A, I'm not going to know that provider B and provider C were significantly lower, because I just get my bill and pay my costs. And same with the, on the employer side, that's where you need to be able to drill into that claims information and actually identify what are we paying for different surgeries or different services. All right, those unknown costs then lead to higher inflation. So a couple of quick charts here. I know that's very small, but what you can tell is that everything that is red and up and to the right are significantly increased. You can see the scale over there, up to 200. 2 of the top 4 of those inflation since 2020 are hospital services and medical care services. Also, interestingly, everything that's either flat or below the line operate in free market economics. So the model works. Then how does that translate? This inflation then translates to, specifically, just want to kind of focus in on 2024. The cost of coverage for a family of 4 is $25,000. $25,000, just about a little under $10,000 difference from a decade ago. And again, there's this misconception or this hard to connect of like, that's our compensation. You know, that's what we're paying people. If somebody has a $100,000 salary and you're paying $25,000 for their benefits, their comp is $125,000. And granted, the employees do contribute, but as you can see from 19 to 24, that's staying more flat. And the employers are bearing that larger increase. So we have unknown costs, which leads to higher inflation, higher premiums. And now, if we're paying premium dollars, are we getting premium results? This is a chart from the Kaiser Family Foundation tracking both, in the middle there, life expectancy, on the far, the annual per capita spend per person. And you can see we win the race on the per capita spending by a couple of $1,000. And compared to that comparable country average, almost double, a little under double. But then on the life expectancy, which I think is maybe a fair representation of ROI, we are multiple years behind and lagged.
So yeah, not a money problem.
Thank you. Yeah. So if nothing changes, couple of examples, and these aren't, all of them, but the impacts on insurance here are that we end up with higher costs, right? In that unknown cost scenario, uninformed, it's a referral, it's the closest proximity, how we're making those decisions. We pay higher costs, which then in turn lead to higher premiums. This year's claims lead to next year premiums. And then, trying to read, it's really small. That because of those increasing premiums, we as companies try and offset those costs by eroding plan designs. So a PPO plan deductible a decade ago was probably around $700, $800. Now that's north of $1,500 just on a PPO. The high deductibles, similar. We're offloading and eroding plan designs, which leads to less protection for employees. So if we do know the price, what happens? We're going to become informed purchasers. I doubt many people, if they saw the cost of that hip surgery, are going to sign up for the $42,000 one. And then as employers, we also sit in the seat that we can educate and inform and create plan designs that steer people to those low-cost, high-quality providers. We're also going to create competition. I'm sure if provider A sees all of their hip surgeries going out the door to the neighbor down the street or a couple blocks away, they're going to sharpen their pencils. And free market economics are going to be at play. And then from the employer side, you're going to be able to, with this information, be able to offer enhanced benefits. And we'll talk to it a little bit in terms of being able to offer $0 care. And I know some of the later speakers are going to be able to speak to that as well, but it's impactful.
Last piece of the equation in the healthcare cycle is the buyer, so the employees, the patients, right? So what's their issues if nothing changes? Number one, nobody understands their health plan. Okay, well, I've been at this for 12 years, 14 years. I've been in open enrollment meetings. I've gone through all the education. It's still really challenging to get through to understand. So what this says is 4%. 4% of people can correctly identify the 4 terms of a health insurance plan: deductible, out-of-pocket maximum, co-insurance, and copay. Okay, so it's confusing to start with. Okay, now when we actually would get into the healthcare system, you can imagine how much more confusing it is for them. It's becoming a bigger and bigger financial burden for them. So we just saw this 2 days ago. I think it's got released. But this came out, I think it was from CBS, but American borrowed an estimated $74 billion for medical bills in 2024. So 30 million people borrowed $74 billion. We ran the math and that was roughly $2,500 bucks?
Yep, just under
$2,500 bucks a person, which our brains can understand $2,500. $74 billion is like, no way. That number's way too big. When you actually do the math, $2,500, like, okay, I could see that. So people are borrowing money consistently because it is the number one driver of debt, of bankruptcies, is individual medical debt. This is a Gallup poll, and it skews based on salary, so income-based. As far as the question is, how concerned are you that a major health event in your household could lead to medical debt? Okay, so it's really interesting. So the green and blue are either very concerned or somewhat concerned. And what's really interesting, and I won't go through each of the bars, of course, you can see everything's pretty much north of 60 for most of it. But in that 120 to 180,000, that number is still at 46, so almost half. Almost half of folks that we would say are at a topper tier income bracket are still very concerned or somewhat concerned that a medical episode could put them into debt. This is another video. We couldn't get it pulled through, so we just pulled the quote from the patient. So there's a patient there on the right and physicians on the left. And this is the direct quote from the patient is, "I'm far more terrified of insurance, like by a power of 100, than the cancer. The cancer itself to me seems manageable." Okay, so think of that. I mean, that's the scariest C word that a lot of us have probably all experienced, either ourselves or within our own families, and it's terrifying. And this person's more worried about what the bill's gonna look like or how to navigate healthcare. That's a problem. And the last one is delayed care. I'm sure all of us have heard stats on delayed care, but just want to hit on this one more time as a problem. But we'll look at it on the total. It's about 40% of people admitted to either delayed care or prescription drugs due to cost or uncertainty. Okay, so that is a big problem because it might not be a problem right now, but if we don't address it now, what does that turn into long term? Okay, and we've seen it, and I'll share in just a minute on what we're seeing. So people are waiting, right? Whether it's time to get in or I'm just scared of what it's going to cost me, folks are waiting to go and see and get care. So how does this impact insurance? Well, number one, we're making uninformed decisions because we don't have a lot of information to make decisions on, okay? So again, we're picking the $42,000 facility versus the $9,000 facility. As a patient, to me, what's in it for me? I don't care, I'm gonna hit my deductible out of pocket. It doesn't matter to me at that point, okay? But if we bring in some free market economics, how can that help and assist? Turning into reactive care, so again, I'm gonna wait until something happens and then it's a big problem. That takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of energy that I may or may not do. And then the last is the increased costs and severity. So this is a big one. So we don't take care of ourselves, and then it turns into a bomb, right? So it turns into a really explosive. And this is what we've seen from the insurance side. Our large claims are getting larger at a much more rapid pace. Okay, they're getting much bigger and at a much more rapid pace. So waiting, and then really big expense. So actuaries are pricing those in for the future because they're not seeing the trend change. So they're pricing those in for premiums in the future. So if we know the price, it could be simple, right? We don't have to have deductibles and copays and all the terms that I don't know. It could be really, really simple. $0 care in some cases, right? If I'm an employer and I see the $42,000 or the $9,000, why the heck wouldn't I tell my people, hey, if you go over here, it's not gonna cost anything. I'll take the $30,000 delta all day long. Get the care when you need it, and then enhance trust and gratitude. So trust with providers, heck, gratitude with an employer. Like, can you imagine if it doesn't cost me much or of anything when I have to go and interact with healthcare, like what I'm gonna say about my employer? Like, that's a really, really good opportunity that free market and direct care can bring in to employers and patients alike.
So just to recap on that, just wanted to drill home what happens if we know the price. Also failed to mention when I talked about setting the table, like this is a room full of sellers and buyers, and we're all buyers on the patient side. And so hopefully as you, in your respective role, if that's on the seller side, you're shaking your head in agreement of like, I've experienced that, I know that. Or if you're on the buyer side, you're able to empathize and understand a little bit more of their struggle. And likewise, on the buyer side, if you're a physician, you're able to empathize a little bit more, or if you're on the buying side, you've experienced a little bit of this pain. And so, to just review, when we know what the price is on the seller side, we're going to get more time to practice medicine, which is why I believe most people get into the field, not to deal with insurance and appeals and try and track down some maybe very small checks, which I got a preview of Dr. A's presentation, and you'll get to see firsthand that. You're going to have more efficient resources, enhanced trust. I know that we've talked about that. Again, just wanting to put this before your eyes to see all the benefits that come to a free market economy when we know the price. And good news, it's happening. I know Dr. A had mentioned in his intro, like this Free Market Medical Association is something that's been going on for many years, and there are many people even in this room that are practicing it, or that have experienced it, or have asked for what's the cash price. And so it's happening today. And so we just want to end with a quick story of the tale of two hips. If nothing changes, a hip event happens, I go to my PCP. As a buyer, I'm going to have my deductible or copay, whatever plan design I'm in, so I'm going to have a cost for that. And then the provider for that is going to have a delayed payment, or a delayed payment at a discounted payment. That primary care visit is going to lead to a specialist referral. I'm going to have, on the patient side, a copay or deductible coinsurance. Likewise, the provider of that, the physician of that visit, is going to have a discounted payment and a delayed payment. That's going to lead to imaging. I'm forking over more money for my deductible or copay, whatever it may be. The imaging center is also going to have delayed payment, probably at a negotiated price, which leads to the surgery. And again, now we're, high stakes, I'm maxing out my deductible, maxing out my out-of-pocket maximum, and the provider of that and the facility of that are having delayed negotiated payments. in that case. So the result is the patient, stakeholder number one, maxes out their insurance, putting themselves in financial debt or financial stress. The seller receives discounted payments throughout that story and delayed payments. And then the employer pays the difference. And maybe they went to provider C and you got a good deal, or maybe they went to provider A and you're paying extra $10,000 or $20,000. And then this is the question that that patient and their family are going to ask. What else do we need to get done? Which leads to higher utilization, which is a result of delayed care because of financial concern. And the cycle goes on and on.
So if we know the price, as Dr. Ray said, all these puzzle pieces, if you can kind of put them all together, which Matt will do a really, really good job at the end of sharing how he put all these puzzle pieces together, this is what it could look like. So you have that exact same need, or I'm sorry, that exact same need. Go to your PCP, already an arranged fee, because the employer put all those puzzle pieces together with their facilitator and team, that doesn't cost anything. Then I got to go to a specialist for that need. Same thing, know the price ahead of time. From the patient side, what's in it for me, right? That's always the question. That doesn't cost them anything either. And then they got to go and have their imaging done. Well, since we know the price of the imaging and know that it costs much less at this place over here versus this place over here, that doesn't cost anything either. And then I actually have to get the surgery, and because we have those transparent prices that we showed earlier, we incentivize, right, through the plan of where to go, and the power of zero is real. So if an employee sees zero, who doesn't want to not spend money on healthcare, right? As much as we've been spending, who doesn't not want to spend money? So that costs nothing too. So the patient, it's fantastic, right? Because they don't pay anything out of their pocket. So as a result, they have zero, right? The power of zero, and then they tell everybody else that they work with how they had this big healthcare episode, it didn't cost them anything. Everyone's like, what? Employer wins. Or I'm sorry, the physician wins because they get paid up front, right? No bill chasing, they don't get paid one, it's just, I get paid at the time of service. And then employer wins too as well, because since we know the price, we're taking advantage of all those differences and then sharing that back as savings, because the plan will save and then the patient wins too as well. So really, I guess,
Oh, no. I did not plan for that. I'm not going to ask my daughters to get us
as
back
Ty
in.
said, with everyone that's in the room, I mean, the question really that we leave with is why not? Like, why not give it a shot? I'd say, because we know where we're at, and if all goes to hell in a handbasket, you can always go back. But really, we want to thank everybody that's here, excited for the rest of the morning. And yes, we have a couple minutes for a question.
So, that $74 billion you put up there, that's exactly what United Healthcare made last year.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I think that's starting to
That's a big difference.
where we need to make it not-for-profit. So I'm not for companies making profit. That's okay. Nike shoes or your shirt, Gucci or whatever. But when you're dealing with healthcare, you're dealing with people.
Right.
And they shouldn't be able to do that because we're a commodity. And so we need some laws on how to get up to the cost of the problem. But yes, you need insurance. I'm not saying that for the hip replacement. But, some of the stuff with the PCP or whatever, when patients come in now, we just charge them cash. You're better off being going doing goods like they're saying.
Right.
It's a fiasco.
Unfortunately, that's a decision that's above my head, is what we would say. But let's talk more afterwards, because there's a lot that you can do to kind of start to get around that, for sure.
What do you mean to get around? How would you
Get around the normal channels that there are today, because that's really kind of what we're saying is instead of creating a bunch of new laws.
That one insurance we're talking about, $74 billion.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not talking about F, but I'm not saying no.
Yeah. Right.
Blue Cross Blue Shield, I mean, just that one alone, that's how many people pay their money coming out of their paycheck to those big boys, and nobody needs what you millions of dollars to about. Okay? So we need to get in this room.
And I mean, my thought there is that just speaks to the misaligned incentives. Those are for-profit insurance carriers, and their primary stakeholder is the stock shareholder. And so they're incentivized to that.
Law makes
Yeah.
it work
Yeah.
non-for-profit.
Yeah.
Because some Blue Cross Blue Shields are non-for-profit, there's some of the
Yeah.
payers
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, we're just scratching the surface on all of it because there's, write-offs and all. You can get into a rabbit hole pretty quick. So in agreement, yeah. And again, that's what this morning and the space is about, is to try and find alternatives and solutions to that, to purchase and acquire healthcare in a different way. Yeah. We are at time. There is going to be hopefully some extended questions at the very end of the day, though. So
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Tyler. So now you got a little taste of what we're gonna be talking about today.